my wife and I do not call each other during the day. We respect each other's workplace. So if we need something or want to talk, it's a text. So very rarely do I get a phone call from my wife. And then that day she called me. So because of that, I take the phone call. And she told me that my daughter had called her and had swallowed a bottle of pills, and that she was on the way to the house. And so then I went and told my boss I needed to leave, told him what was going on. And then my wife called me back and asked what to do. I said, you need to pick her up, put her in the car, and get her to the ER. Don't bother calling an ambulance, just go. So she took her to the ER, and then I met her at the ER. You may or may not believe in a higher being. You may not believe in God, but that day, even though it was a bad day, everything that could go right went right. My daughter had left school, gave the school a story. She forgot something at home, went home, and for whatever reason decided that, she just couldn't deal with. So she took the pills. And then as the effect of the pills were starting to come on, she started to question or regret her decision. So she called my wife. Looking back, I didn't see anything abnormal going on in her life. But there were traumatic events. My wife's mother had just recently passed away. And I knew that brought sadness into our family, of course. But what I didn't know was that my daughter was feeling regret because she's a dancer. Her and my wife were at a dance competition. And my mother-in-law was admitted to the hospital. And of course, they made the decision thinking that my mother-in-law was okay, that they wouldn't go from, I believe, Kansas City to Iowa to see her. So they came home. They were tired. So she actually felt a tremendous load of regret. And then just the stressors of youth, growing up, school, friends, things like that. And for her, it became too much weight for her to carry. So was there any key red flags? No. My daughter didn't share what she was going through, at least not with me. And part of that is one of the other things that I learned as a parent is when you and I were growing up, our generations, I imagine we're relatively close to age. I was taught, a man doesn't share his emotions. You got to be strong, firm. You deal with whatever life gives you. You stand up and you move on. And so that's the way I parented, so I didn't see those signs, not because maybe they weren't there, but maybe because my daughter wasn't displaying them to me or I wasn't seeing them. So I don't think there was any. Could I have read things differently? Now I would have. Hindsight's 20/20. There's no class in being a parent. You don't need a license. You don't need a certificate. And as you get older, as you grow, you learn things. But I didn't know those things when I was a young parent. I parented the way I was raised because that was my experience. That's what I thought was the right way. Now I realize that maybe my parents didn't know everything either. So, yeah. So the thing with suicide is most of the time we focus on the individual. If the person does end up committing suicide, it's the why, what was going on with them. With someone that attempted suicide, we focus on that individual, but you don't necessarily hear a lot of conversation about the family, those around that individual. So I didn't know what to expect. I went into this not knowing what the path was going to be, what the treatment was going to be. And I struggled with, well, what about me? How am I supposed to deal with this? How am I supposed to interact with my daughter? And I didn't feel that that was part of the process. And so, of course, I started doing research and reading and trying to figure out how, as a parent, I could help her, support her. And I started getting, I guess you would call it treatment, when I started going to her therapy sessions with her. So when she was discharged from inpatient, then she started her outpatient treatment. And because she was a child, a youth, a parent went with her. My wife went with her on many of them, and then I went with her. And I started listening to the therapist, and the therapist helping my daughter work through it was actually my therapy, because I was watching the interaction, how the therapist talked to my daughter. And then, so I took that, and then I dealt with my own, because I went through a phase of depression afterwards. Because why? You know, what did our family do wrong? What did I do wrong as a father? What did she do wrong? What could we have done differently? So that was a struggle. It was, for at least for me. As a parent, it was my duty to fix. So if my child had a problem, it was my job to fix that problem. And I failed miserably as a parent, preparing my children, enabling them, empowering them on how to deal with things. The other thing, being a male, being a soldier, and that, you know, that concrete image that you put up, I didn't always share my frustrations with my kids. I didn't let them see that I dealt with issues, stress, depression, things like that. And I think that's a problem in our society, especially with men. And our kids see that, and maybe do they think that as parents we've got it when we don't? So I think we need to do a better job as parents, showing our kids that, you know what, I ain't always got it. I struggle too. Maybe not full detail of what you're going through, but I never allowed my kids to see those emotions. I can tell you, I never once saw my dad cry. Now, looking back, I can guarantee you that there were times that he cried, but as his son, I never saw him cry. And that was our generation. That's how we were raised. And I know for me, that's how I raised my kids. It's different now. When we're talking, you know, and I get home from work and she asks me how my day was, if it was stressful, I tell her it was stressful. If I had a bad day, I tell her I had a bad day. And then we talk about how to deal with those things. So she's back home now after her freshman year, working 2 part-time jobs. She has stressful days. In the past, I could easily tell her, well, this is what you need to do. I don't do that. We talk about it, and then I ask her, you know, well, how do you think you could handle it? How do you think you could handle it better? And we work through that. And I think that's more important than always fixing the problem, because now she's learning that, you know what, tomorrow's not going to be easy, but how do I make it through tomorrow? And she's got to be able to work through that herself.